everyone, Hollie here with Becker School Supplies. Now, the Science Center is my favorite part of the early childhood classroom, but I know that sometimes it can be challenging to keep that space engaging all year long. So Becker's has put together a fantastic Science Center kit filled with tools and objects and other great things to really reinvigorate your Science Center. Now, I want to share with you some of the ways that I like to use those tools and objects to really extend the learning beyond the Science Center. Are you ready? Let's get started. Today, I want to talk about cookies in the Science Center. Tree cookies. I'd be willing to bet that you have some of these bad boys in your Science Center right now. I would also be willing to bet that they're in a basket next to pine cones and sticks and other beautiful natural materials. And lastly, I'd be willing to bet they're largely ignored by your students, which is a shame because they give us a lot of opportunity to talk about how living things grow, which I know is an important topic in all early childhood classrooms. So let's take a closer look at them. Now, we all know that the rings in our tree cookies show us how a tree grows, that the space between each of the rings is basically a year of growth in a tree's life. So let's look a little bit closer. You've probably counted rings with your students before, but looking a little more closely, you'll see that some rings are far apart, like the ones at the center of this tree, and then some of them are much closer together, like towards the outside, which tells us at the beginning the tree grew a lot quickly, and towards the end of its life, it was growing more slowly. Now, we can compare tree cookies. We've got two here. One is much larger than the other, probably telling us that that tree's bigger. But if we look at these two slices, they're almost exactly the same size, but they look very different. So are they the same age? Probably not. The one on the right is probably younger. It has fewer rings than the one on the left. But when students think about growing, they think about getting taller because that's how they grow. That's how humans grow. I mean, sometimes we get wider, but largely we get taller. So how do we connect sort of those tree cookies getting wider and wider as the tree grows with more and more rings to the idea that trees also grow really tall? So I want to show you an activity that sort of links those two ideas together and get students thinking about how a tree grows, not only the rings, but also the whole tree itself. So what I've done is I've grabbed one of the tree cookies with a pair of tongs and I'm holding it over a piece of paper. Then I bring a flashlight and shine it directly over top of it. And you can see that there's now a circle shadow. I'm going to ask my young scientist to trace the shadow on the paper. You can see now we've got a nice circle. Now our tree's going to grow. So I lift up my tree cookie and now that shadow is bigger. Now the problem is I was doing this in a very bright room, so it was really hard for her to see the shadow. But after I sort of told her the shadow's on the outside, she was able to trace it. And that's what you keep doing. You keep having your tree grow taller and taller and taller so that that shadow gets wider and wider and wider, just like a tree cookie would. You can also experiment with having your tree grow a lot and have the rings be really wide, or grow a little bit and have the rings be really tiny. So we built a shadow tree. As our tree got taller and taller and taller, the rings also got wider and wider and wider. It's a really neat way to connect growth in height to growth in our tree rings. I hope this gives you a different way to use your tree rings in your classroom. Now, if you need more tree rings or any other really cool tools to make your Science Center exciting, check out shopbecker.com, where we have an amazing science kit already prepared for you. And you can grab the tools and the objects that you need to make a really exciting Science Center. So thank you, and join me again soon for more Science Center tips with Becker School Supplies.